So just a note, I have reason to believe that you are in a spiral. Right now, each one of you is in a spiral. And as I say that, you can become aware of what you think I'm projecting onto you, and perhaps open yourself to the possibility that I might not mean what you initially thought I meant. Because the title of today's talk is Onward and Upward. And it's about the spirals that we're in. The spirals that we're in are repeating patterns in our lives, because life isn't static. We are always moving forward. And there's the notion that as I take this next step in life, it moves me forward and forward and forward. And we sometimes have the idea that it's a straight line, that there's a linear process as we're going from point A to point B, and it's just exactly the way that we intended or set out to be. Tell me if that's been your experience. Perhaps there have been some twists and turns along the way as you go through this process and unfolding that we call life. And the reason that I talk about it being spirals is because we tend to go through similar experiences again and again. Sometimes as we're climbing up the mountain of our spiritual awakening, what happens is we start here and we walk around the mountain. And eventually, as we are rising up to new levels of spiritual awareness, we get back into familiar territory. So it looks very similar to the way it looked the last time we came around here. We're at a higher altitude. We're at a higher level. We have a higher perspective on it, but the situation, the surroundings are similar. And yeah, the same thing happens when we're on a downward spiral. And it happens all the time. You can notice where it happens, and it's different for each of us. For some people, it's in their relationships. Some people get started in a relationship, and it's all wonderful and lusty, and oh my God, this is great, this is the person for me, and it's really that enthusiasm, and then you start noticing that she or he or they are starting to say things, you're like, well, where'd that come from? Why? This is very similar to a previous relationship that I've been in. Why did they always do that? Why do they always start treating me like this? What's going on? And we start recognizing the same thing happening again. And there are lots of people who have been in lots of relationships, and they all start in a similar way, and they all end in a similar way. And what happens is, eventually we get to the point where we say, what's going on? Where's the relationship that I want to be having? Where's the one that doesn't lead down this same path? And as soon as we're ready to have a breakthrough, then there's transformation that's possible. Because as we look at it, the one thing that all those relationships have in common is us. Okay, they all had one partner in common. And if they're all doing the same thing, then that partner probably has some involvement in it. Either from a practical level or from a spiritual level or from an intentional level, or there's a lesson that needs to be learned or something in there. One that fits into my lifestyle very clearly is the diet and exercise program. You know, about getting to the point where, oh, well, I'm X number of pounds heavier than I want to be, so I'm going to choose this program. It's going to be Weight Watchers, it's going to be Atkins, it's going to be keto, it's going to be Noom, it's going to be fill in the blank, whatever the program happens to be. And I work the program for a while, and the program works for a while, and then I get to the point where I want it to be, and I get off the program, and then there's holidays or birthdays or celebrations or something else, and I look up, and there I am, back at that same spot in the spiral, saying, oh, well, I'd really like to get down X number of pounds into the weight that I'd really like to be. And I get to go around again. How many people do you know, whether it's yourself or somebody else, who keep having the same problems with their boss? They keep on getting a job where their boss is a jerk, and it shows up in the same sort of way. The boss is critiquing them for something that they're just doing the best that they can, and that's the way they've done it all along, and yada, 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 yada. Because we all either are or know people who have been in that situation. And the same thing happens with health. Do you know anybody who says, oh yes, I always get bronchitis at this time of year? You know? I used to have a family member who said that. And fortunately, it has been many, many years since she said that, and also many, many years since bronchitis. So what happens is, as we're going through that path, as we're wandering that ring of life that we're in, we have the possibility of being in a downward spiral where every time it happens, it's worse, it's more acute, it's more of a problem, it's more of a crisis, it's more of an emergency. If you want to know exactly what that looks like, check out somebody who's been involved in a 12-step program. Because what happens in a 12-step program, we go down and down and down, and it's when we hit bottom that we say, something's got to change here. I gotta get into a 12-step program because I cannot continue doing things the way that I've been doing them. And what happens is there is then an upward spiral. And we get to start ourselves on an upward spiral. And sometimes in those programs, because addictions are really easy to measure, if you go by how long it's been since you've done something, and it goes from being 6 years to being 3 days, then there's been a little bit of a downward shift in the spiral. And it's not like that's bad. That might not have been what we intended, but that's where we are. And that spiral that we're involved in, it is completely possible for that to be an ever-evolving upward spiral, for it to get better and better and better, for our relationships to become healthier and more uplifting and more positive, for our diet or exercise or fitness program to make us feel good, and to build on that and continue feeling better and better and better. It is possible for that to happen. It is possible to have a transformation at work. I used to be one of those people who, jokingly said my bosses are always jerks, and then I went to work for myself. And what do you do with that? So there was the possibility to open to something different. And so the invitation is, if you find yourself getting back into familiar territory, and it's like, oh, this again, and you're so unhappy, oh my God, why am I here again? Look at the path that you've been on. Look at the stuff that's been going on for you, and ask yourself the serious question, are you ready to make some changes? Because as I mentioned before, the one thing all of those turns around the spiral have in common is you. You are the one who is walking that path. And if that path is going to change, the person who's going to be taking those steps differently is going to be you. Yeah. I love nachos. Got to do that pretty sparingly if I want to stay on the program that I want to be on. And by the way, there is nothing wrong with nachos. I will defend nachos. I'll go toe-to-toe with anybody who says there's something wrong with nachos. But not so much, not for me. And that's okay. Oh, and by the way, you don't have to get it right the first time. When we go through this exercise in transformation, spiritual, emotional, physical, whatever it is, what we want to do is change something. We want to innovate. We want to do something differently than the way that we've done it before. And there is a whole process that we get to go through about what's mine to let go of, what's mine to embrace, what new thing is possible, and how do I engage with that. And I kind of refer to this as spiral spirituality. So, and there are 5 steps to it, 5 steps to personal transformation. And I'm going to be making a class about this. And the first one is intention. We choose the experience that we're going to have. Now, it's not like looking at a catalog and say, I want that one. And we can't necessarily describe how we want the rest of the world to engage with us. What we get to do is get a description of how we want to feel, what we want our life to be like, to open to that possibility and to set that intention. The second step is allowing. Because our monkey minds, our ego minds tell us that once we've got an intention, once we want something to be happening, we know how to make it happen. And it's going to come together and unfold the way that we said it should. I'm going to meet the person on this dating app. I'm going to finally find the right diet program. I'm going to, finally I'm going to get the right job. Or I'm going to be hired by somebody who's actually wonderful. It'd be lovely if that were going to happen. Allowing is letting go of the details and thinking that we know how it's going to happen, and be open to having it happen however it's going to happen. Allowing so much is about trust. It's about grace. It's about knowing that that infinite creative power that creates everything can create something new for us, and we get to get out of the way let go of the how, open to the wow, and then let that newness come in. We pray, and then we get out of the way. And that's allowing. Gratitude is huge in this as well. Sometimes we think that we get to be thankful for the stuff that's happened to us. We get to be thankful for this experience that we've had. And it says in the scripture, in all things be thankful. Don't be thankful for things. Be grateful to begin with. Because the thing that we get to be most grateful about is that we have the ability to set ourselves on an ever upward spiral. There is an infinite creative power that creates everything, that's creating our life. And it is ready to create that uplift for us. The next time around the loop, when we get to that familiar territory, it's like, oh, things are so much better. I love the view from up here. This is great. That infinite creative power is able to create that and ready to create that. And we get to act as if it already has. We get to express the gratitude for the good that's already underway, even when we haven't seen it yet. And that leads to the next step, which is surrender. As we get into gratitude for the newness that's coming along, we get to let go of our old story. If I keep telling the story about how diets don't work for me and I always have a problem with my weight, that I always have relationships that end in consternation and failure, that my boss is always a jerk, that I get that illness like clockwork. If I want to stick to that story, I'm going to continue living that story. I need to surrender that story. I need to give up what has happened up until now so that I can open up to something new and possible. So that goes hand in hand with gratitude. What is it that I'm going to surrender? What is it that I'm going to be grateful in for the newness that's coming about in my life? And the last one, the F word, sorry, forgiveness. That's the active part of surrender. When somebody did something to me and I am still holding a charge about it, then that charge is what's active in my life. And the forgiveness is not about letting that person off the hook. Because whatever they did that I experienced as bad, as uncomfortable, as hurtful, as unpleasant, as negative, yeah, they did that. Probably. I mean, it's possible that I made it up. But I'm certainly having the reaction and the response to whatever it was that happened. And it is an energy and a charge that I'm carrying with me now. And I need to let go of the story in the same way that I need to surrender my personal parts of the story. I need to let go of what been done to me in order to make room for something new to be done for me and as me. And oh, by the way, it's not one and done. I think I might have mentioned that at the beginning. What will happen as we go through this process, the steps of spiral spirituality, of intention, of grace and allowing, of gratitude and surrender and forgiveness, is we'll get ourselves right back into the same circumstance again, at a different level, at a different perspective. And we get to lather, rinse, and repeat. Because it's an ongoing process. When we get to the end of that path, when we have taken each of the steps that we're here to take, they have a memorial service for us. So the whole process is about how we're going to do this and bring more and more and more of the good into our lives. It is certainly possible. It is at hand right now. There is an ever upward spiral available to each of us. And as we are on it, it's lovely to remember and notice that we're on it and be grateful to be on it and to invite in more and more of that good. And if you find yourself getting into a neighborhood that seems familiar and you might be on a downward spiral, that's a real strong invitation to do something different, to let go of some of the baggage, some of the stuff that's weighting you down, and invite in something new. So onward and upward, for each of us and for all of us. You deserve it. So it is.
All, believing that there is one divine intelligence that governs everything, I affirm that this intelligence is acting in my mind, causing me to know what is best and to do what is best. I open my mind to new thoughts, new ideas. And I know that as I do this, new experiences shall come to me. Believing that there is one presence animating everything, I recognize this presence in every one I meet, in everything I do, and in every circumstance that confronts me. Therefore I rest in peace and in the quiet confidence that all is well. And it is my sincere desire that the life and the love that God is shall flow through me to the whole world.